evening, folks. This is Abner Perney, and this is PUOP, a program I conceived probably 6 or 7 years ago, and then it took Dave Norland and Janet Hansen getting together wanting to do a local talk program, and they liked my idea, and they've made it work thus far. So this is my first segment, and I have 3 topics for this evening's show. First one's going to be called Planning Our Ongoing Prosperity, relating to water, because you got to have water to prosper and to have an ongoing life. So, ongoing prosperity. Dave Norland's going to be sitting at the table with me, is sitting at the table with me in case I suddenly go silent. I mean, that's not likely to happen, but if it happens, we'll let Dave talk a little bit. Maybe.
Yeah. With some flavored soda water, by the way.
Right, that's what we're sipping. I asked for stronger stuff, and I was told this was not commercial television, and it ain't going to happen.
Okay.
But at any rate, second topic is going to be polling of our people, a little discussion of the mail-in bond election for School District 305, our major school district here in Salina County, but not the only one.
And it should be pointed out that Abner is also president of the League of Women Voters, and he is responsible for having a Lunch and Learn noon session to acquaint the public with precisely that, which also will air on Access Television. So,
if it hasn't already, it may have. I don't know. That's part of the problem with Access TV is we've got to figure out how to get the schedule in more people's hands more of the time.
yes, indeed.
At any rate, then the third topic will be my fun topic. It'll be a show and tell topic on the topic. The PUOP version of it is pedaling on our pathways. When I was 60 years old, I decided I liked bicycles again. When I was 40 years old, I was pedaling as fast as I could on an antique 12-speed down Glen Avenue up by the cemetery. And if you've ever been by Glen Avenue by the cemetery, it has terrible edges on it, especially back then. No curb, no gutter, just kind of fell into the ditch, and that's what I did, and I rolled in the middle of the street, and I had a bump on my head because I wasn't wearing a helmet. So now we wear helmets when we're pedaling on our pavement. Boys and girls,
remember to wear your helmets.
So we wear our helmets now. But at any rate, then, so I didn't ride my bike for almost 20 years, and then when I was about 60, I got interested again in bicycling. So
I didn't realize it'd been that long, Abner.
Oh, yeah, but you never forget. Bicycling is sort of like breathing or walking. Once you can do it, you can usually do it the rest of your life as long as you're daring and brave enough. But at any rate, that'll
be unbalanced in some ways, but not in that way. We're good.
That'll be the third topic, is pedaling on our pathways.
Yeah.
So, water. Water, most people should have noticed that we have taken water for granted. Everybody's got running water in their house here in America, and you turn the tap and there's water. And I think a lot of people don't know where it comes from. In Salina, the water that's in your tap comes from a municipal utility. It's operated by the city, but in the beginning of Salina, people took water from the river directly or their own private wells, and we didn't have a public water system until the 19-teens when there was a private water company. Then I believe it was in about 1920, the city took it over. And one of the interesting things about it is that it actually still operates pretty much as if it were a private company. It's called in our budgeting process, in the city's budgeting process, it's called an enterprise fund. And so the city has a separate staff that runs our water and sewer system. And of course, you know, you sign up for water and sewer, you get a bill. You get also a trash bill.
Yes.
The trash collection is another enterprise fund. It's separate from the water and sewer, but it comes on the same bill. But at any rate, our water comes from the Smoky Hill River, strangely enough, since you can see the Smoky Hill River if you pay attention. It crosses our town in numerous places. Or our streets cross it in numerous places. It zigzags through for 7 miles. And then it also comes from 18 wells. And the 18 wells you can recognize. We'll have a picture of the 18, or at least one or two of the 18 wells. But the 18 wells look like little square brick houses with numbers on them.
Isn't there one in Oakdale Park?
There are 2 or 3 in Oakdale Park.
Right? I didn't.
But he keeps... see, this is amateur television, and
Yes, yes.
for some reason, they keep changing cameras on us, and there's a man
It's-
waving.
It's for variety,
But at any rate,
yes. And we'll try to follow that, by the way.
there are 18 wells, and about half our water comes from well water, half our water comes from the river. But the wells are all in the river valley, and they're all close to the river, and they all actually get the bulk of their water from the aquifer that underlies the river. So the river is our #1 key source of water.
Yes, indeed.
And the river is called the Smoky Hill River. It rises out in western Kansas almost 300 miles from here and wanders all over the prairie. But the most important part of it for our concern is now Lake Canopolis. And Lake Canopolis was built in the 1940s, and I think it went into operation in 1949. So in regard to the lake, there's a lot of things that we need to watch. Last year, the lake got noticeably low, and the outflow from the lake has to be managed carefully by the Corps of Engineers and with some advice from the city and other users of water. And when that happens, they can adjust the gates and let water out. But the interesting thing that's happened in the last few years, and you may remember 2006, the river ran practically dry. We take our water from the river at Billburg Park. There's a large concrete structure that looks like a deck that you can fish off of, and in fact you can fish off that deck.
Yep.
But it has gates and screens in it, and water is taken in there. It's pumped under the old channel of the Smoky Hill to the hill itself, the Indian Rock Hill. There's a concrete bunker-looking building built into the side of the hill, and it has a patio with a fence on top of it, which is kind of strange, and we've got a photo of that. But and then it's pumped from there to the water plant downtown. That is that good-looking 1920s style building for the main office component
And
of it.
I am right that Indian Rock Park is the highest point in Salina's landscape.
In Salina's, in the city limits. It's not the highest point in Saline County.
No, no.
But we digress again.
But with this Salina.
The only
And while we're digressing, we should say, by the way, that water, people ought to study the map, because I wasn't aware of it until I'd lived here for 5 years, but that water released from the reservoir goes through quite a bit of Lindsborg, Marquette, a whole lot of farmland before it ever gets here.
And
wasn't aware
the
of that.
impressive villages of Bridgeport,
Yes.
Assaria, and Mentor.
Yes.
Now, when you hear reports on the river and the river stage, you'll hear them talk about the Mentor Bridge or the Mentor Gauge. Well, the Mentor Gauge is actually on a bridge over the river on K4 Highway, and have a photo of that. It shows you the USGS kind of space-age looking steel box with solar panel and antennas on it, because the thing's pretty much totally automated. And there's a steel box or some kind of cast metal box that's on the side of the bridge directly over the middle of the river, and then through some kind of electronic radar sonar magic.
We don't know what it is. It's just,
But it measures the depth of the water, and then through the beauty of calculus, they come up with cubic feet per second that are flowing past the Mentor Gauge.
Right.
These
so that's
gauges,
kind of a key indicator, is it not?
Yeah,
that's where you find out.
it's nice if we have in the neighborhood of 20 or more cubic feet per second, and then it actually looks kind of like a river.
Yep. But it's been as low as 1.6 cubic feet per second, I believe.
Yeah, that was when it was dry. 1.6 cubic feet
dry.
Of water at Mentor, which River Miles is probably 8 miles from downtown.
Oh.
By the time it went that 8 miles, there was no water left. So that was a dry day. That was a dry season.
Yes, it was.
Now, the other interesting, most critical gauge is on the high side of the reservoir, and that measures the Smoky Hill when it runs into Canopolis Reservoir. And that gauge is right at Kansas Highway 14 at the edge of Ellsworth. Now, there are other little streams that run into the reservoir, some creeks and things, but the main one that has been logged, and both these rivers have been logged a long time. I can't remember exactly, but it's approaching 100 years. So they have records of how much water should be, or averages, or on any given day, historically, how much water was flowing along past Ellsworth and how much was flowing past Metter. And of course, once you have the reservoir in there, the reservoir can theoretically let the same amount of water out, or a specified amount of water out into the river at the dam, and thereby, through experience and calculation, know how much water is going to be coming by our intakes in beautiful downtown, where are we? Salina, Kansas.
Well, and when we get to it, I know you're kind of you're walking us through. When we get to it, we need to come back and talk about how much water actually comes into that reservoir from the rainfall to the west.
Well, and that's what you never know, but there were lots of times in the last year or two where the water coming into at Ellsworth was like 6 cubic feet per second, 4 cubic feet per second, practically nothing. Yet we need 20 cubic feet per second or more coming out. In the middle of the summer, what with irrigation that occurs between the dam and our fair city, they frequently let the river flow at 50 cubic feet per second at the dam, but it's reduced to below 20 cubic feet just by irrigation usage before it gets to our fair city.
Whoa.
And in the summer,
almost 2/3 of that use then.
Summer we hit our peak usage of 13 to 15 million gallons a day, and about half that water comes from wells and half from the river. And through the year they can adjust whether we're using well water or river water and what combination. But at any rate, water's the concern. If you've been watching national news this winter, California's the interesting subject, and Arizona, Utah, really everything from Salina west has been in drought conditions for a long time and is on the edge of real serious water shortages. Lake Powell and Lake Mead, the two giant reservoirs that serve California and Arizona, on the Colorado River, Grand Canyon water, basically, they're way down. They're the lowest they've been since they were built.
Well, and this might be a place to talk about how Abner and I were both at a meeting, it's been more than a year ago, maybe you remember this, Abner, where they were studying climatological maps, I think by some universities in Canada who were studying 20-year, 30-year, 50-year long-term climate changes. And of course the red on those maps was the most dry, the most hot area. And I've forgotten the exact number of degrees increase. But the reddest spot for on that map was down around, it ended around liberal Garden City, Dodge City, Kansas. Wasn't here, we were kind of more toward pink here, but in comparison to the rest of the map, we were right smack on the edge of that very, very hot spot in the middle of the United States. So it's important to keep that in mind in terms of planning future water use.
And when Zebulon Pike and Associates came through here in 1806,
it was before Walmart. Yes.
Yeah, they were victims, or his troops. They were troops actually of the U.S. Army, but
armor-laden troops.
They like to use the term the Great American Desert, and essentially they established that the Great American Desert starts about here and then heads west to the front range of the Rockies. And so our biggest area of concern is really from here to the front range of the Rockies, because that's where our water ultimately comes. So we're sitting out here waiting for it to rain west of here, and we have that reservoir. Now people like to think that the reservoir takes care of our problem, but the reservoir is right at 60-some years old now, and the problem is that it has silted in dramatically. And the other problem is that evidence that you see on the Ellsworth gauge that there's not necessarily water running into it as anywhere near as fast as it needs to run out of it to keep our prosperous little city rolling. So
And I was struck by an article, I don't think, I may have heard this before, but it was in the Salina Journal not more than 2 weeks ago, that with the sedimentation in that lake, they are planning, the planned sedimentation that will quote unquote fill that reservoir it'll be filled in 40 years.
40 more years.
Yes, 40 more years.
Yeah. Now,
So-
so what are we doing to try to assure that we're going to have water? Well, the city of Salina has tried to perfect its water rights, and water rights basically go by first in use, first in right, and first to take care of it. And water rights are all well and good, but if there's no water there, then
don't
all
have
you're
much right
doing
to
is
it.
prioritizing your misery. The other thing that is in discussion and actually already has, I think it even is final approval of the city commission, is this kind of weird thing that developed in the 70s.
Yeah.
In the beginning of this federal reservoirs program, the federal government controlled the reservoirs, and they released they did all the water release planning, and they released water as needed to maintain the standards that they developed in this plan. But in the 70s, the infinite wisdom of somebody in government, and I've never been able to track this down, but the federal government didn't want to do that anymore, and they turned it over to the states in which the reservoirs are located. And the states, not wanting to raise taxes to pay for a service to monitor the water, decided that in effect they owned the storage in the lakes, and that they would sell storage in the lakes to water users, which could be industries or cities.
An idea which has really surfaced prominently recently.
Yeah. So,
And the city of Salina has been given the okay by the city commission to pursue buying storage in that lake.
yeah. So if we buy
So what does that mean?
storage, we buy storage in that gives us an additional priority for the use of the water for which we already have spent money to have water rights. But it still doesn't guarantee there's actually going to be any water there. But if there's water there, we will own about a quarter of the water in Canopolis Lake.
And they have, if they have to draw on it, let's assume that they do, they have what they call a protected release.
Yeah.
And that protected release means that they will somehow, now this is going to be interesting if it ever happens, they will say to the people who have the water rights, sorry, you can't draw it, this is protected release, only those individuals who have purchased the water can get it. And as I understand it, the city of Salina has put a formidable amount. We're thinking 250. We don't want to.
I think it's 250,000.
Hundreds of thousands at any rate.
Minimum.
Minimum.
It might be 2.5 million. It's
To
a
purchase storage.
tenfold spread. It's kind of like
Yeah.
improving the Bicentennial Center. But that's another story.
Well, but it should be mentioned that I talked just today to someone who has long-term studied the water. And he is looking at that and saying, you know, the city of Salina and whoever else may be buying air.
Yeah.
When that happens, they may be buying air.
And then we're in big trouble. And nobody has a great solution for that yet, except to use less water.
Yep.
And there are a world of things that can be done to use less water around western Kansas, and that's going to be topics of discussion in the immediate few years, I suspect. But at any rate, Salina has done its best to try to make its water system work. It's complicated, it's self-supporting. The amount of money you pay for your water is enough to pay for the system and the storage and whatever else comes up, because that's the way we've got it structured. It runs like a business. We charge enough for water to keep supplying water. And we've done some things to encourage conservation, but we still use more water per person per day than Hayes.
Yes. And speaking of Hayes imposed low-flow shower heads throughout the city, a lot of more rigid standards, much more than Salina did, even though we've done fairly admirably in conserving.
And fortunately, I've already talked to Householder. He's going to impose showering with a friend.
Aaron
Yeah,
Householder,
when
city
he's
commissioner,
mayor, we're going to have an ordinance that requires showering with a friend during water
Should-
shortages,
should be
because
exciting.
that should save some water. But at any rate,
And we should also mention, Ever, that 80% of the water used in Kansas is not for cities. It's that,
For
you were talking
agriculture. It's
agriculture,
for
irrigation, all those uses?
irrigation, growing corn
So-
so we can have alcohol, so that we can run our cars partially on
So
alcohol,
one-
and that sort of thing.
One
But at
out
any
of,
rate,
1 out of 5 gallons is city. Oh, okay, so
yeah,
enough, go ahead.
So
go ahead.
my whole point
It's your show.
in trying to do this little bit on the show is to make people aware that we do have a water collection and distribution system that is somewhat precarious, even though our city has worked hard to try to ensure that we will actually have a water supply to put into that system. But stand by for news and stand by for more advice on how to save water in the near future. I think now we've done about 20 minutes, and let's go look at the next subject, which is the upcoming election. We love elections. Actually, we don't. I'm fairly disappointed that we've had terrible turnout at local elections in recent years. We've been down to what, 12%, Dave?
12%.
And David is much more of a politician than I am, so he pays
Oh.
attention.
No, I don't.
And they fall,
But that's for the next section.
right. And that's what we're on. We're on polling of our people.
Okay.
That's POOP, man.
Okay, all right.
Polling of
Of our
our
people.
people.
That's right.
P-O-O-P.
And by God, this time we're going to poll them, and we're really going to poll them. This is
Yeah.
a different election. We're going to get 80% turnout, says our county clerk.
Maybe.
Maybe.
And I hope he's right.
Shoot for 80%.
Now, the way it's going to work is a direct mail election. We've only had, I think there was one many years ago, but it wasn't when I lived in Salina, so I don't really remember what it was on. But at any rate, in Kansas, you can have direct mail election on election questions that do not involve electing persons to an office. So we can't have our whole city election by a paper mail-in ballot system, but we can do bond issues, we can do tax increases, we can do things. We could have done our swimming pool. Countywide, we could have done the Expo Center by a mail ballot. If the next time the Expo Center comes around and that pony isn't dead yet, it's still out in the field running around. Someday we'll have another discussion on Expo Centers. But
Tie it down. Tie it to the post.
But at any rate, this is going to be good practice for that, and there is plenty of precedent for actually doing all the elections by mail-in ballot, and seem to get much better turnout than we've been getting in the state of Kansas. That's Washington and Oregon are the two leading states. Is that correct?
I don't know.
think
That
it is.
I'd take your word for it.
And that they've been doing all their elections since starting in 1985. They've been increasing, and in recent years they do all their elections by mail-in ballot,
Really?
and they get 80 to 85% return.
Huh.
So anyway, we're going to try it. So 28,500 plus or minus a few. Mr. Merriman knows the exact number, but he couldn't remember it the day he was presenting
Which
to us.
is interesting in a town of 45,000, 28,500 are registered. Clearly not
In the
full
school
population.
district. This is in the school district.
Yeah.
So the school district
Okay.
doesn't cover the entire city,
Yeah.
but yet it covers some rural area that's outside the city. So altogether, 28,500 approximately voters are going to receive in the mail, starting, the mail is supposed to start March 23rd, so watch your mail. It's going to become in an innocuous envelope that does, I say it's innocuous, it's going to have a lot of printing on it. It's going to say Saline County. It's going to say 305 election on the outside. It's going to be a full business size envelope.
So those of you who go through like I do and say, junk mail, junk mail, junk mail,
Be
sure
careful.
to read USD 305. Yes, indeed.
Or Saline County
It could be
election.
a check that you didn't expect, or it could be the ballot from the USD 305.
But at any rate, look for the ballots starting March 23rd. They're going in the mail, well, starting March 24th, they're going in the mail March 23rd. And then you have until April 8th, noon, high noon. High noon, they're going to start announcing, counting and starting results. They're going to start counting as the votes are received, but they're not going to tell anybody how the results are going until noon, Tuesday, April 8th, Election Day, with a drum roll.
Yeah.
But at any rate, it's a
So
simple ballot.
Short period of time to get that ballot in.
Well, yeah,
Relatively
week
short.
and a half.
Yeah, relatively short.
So you get your ballot, it's one sheet of paper, it's only got one thing on it, that's the question. Does USD 305, our school district. USD, what does that stand for?
Unified School District.
Excellent. I'm glad you could remember. Unified School District number 305,
Even more
Salina.
unified than our presentation tonight.
Any rate, are they authorized to sell bonds up to $110.7 million for numerous improvements to the school buildings, grounds, and some equipment? And
people have probably seen many of these presentations, but when you see school buildings, for example, where the floor is sinking and you can see 1.5 inches or more, 5 inches, where the floor separates from the back, and I see our South High camera person nodding back behind the camera.
well,
So I think, okay.
only baby cougars can go under that right now, not a full-size cougar, right? If a full-size cougar came into the building, it would still not be able to slip under the walls, but the kittens can. At any rate, that's one of the projects. But what's going to happen is you mark that ballot, you fill in the little blanks so the machine can read it, you fold it back up, you put it in a plain brown envelope that came with it with lots of printed instructions on it, and the single most important instruction besides saying yes or no, and in this election, yes means yes.
No means no.
No, yes means borrow the money and rebuild the schools. No means we just don't care.
Yeah.
And we're not going to support doing it.
Is that a political slant on that? Okay, well maybe
Yeah,
not. But I would agree with that slant, yes.
But at any rate, the most important thing is after it's in the envelope is you must sign your name exactly the way you're registered. Like, since I have this split personality problem occasionally and I can't remember which name I used where, mine's Robert Abner Perney.
Yes.
And I have to put all three of those
That
down.
always throws me off when I see your name.
Yeah, people
Abner.
don't remember that R. Abner Perney is Robert Abner Perney, and I went by Abner because Bob was just too damn common
It is.
at the time.
That's true.
And yeah, when I was in kindergarten, we had Rob, Robbie, Bob, Robert, Bobby,
Yep.
and then we
Not
ran
many
out.
Abners.
And so
Not many Abners.
I was Abner.
It's
But my dad
distinctive.
also
It's a
my
distinctive
dad
name.
went by Bob. But at any rate, so mark your ballot, put it in the envelope, sign it
with your
with
proper
your
name,
correct
legal
name, the way that you are registered, and then you may take it in person if you don't trust the U.S. Postal Service, or you may just drop it in the mail because it's a prepaid envelope, so it doesn't cost you any additional thing of your own money in order to participate and vote, and you don't even have to start a car if you're within walking distance of a mailbox.
And we have not cleared this with the USD, but I am guessing that if you put your stamp on there, if you want to save the USD some money, you can maybe do that because it's prepaid postage, and prepaid postage costs them more than a regular mailing list.
I thought it was about the same.
It might be.
It's
You'll
50.
save them money.
You'll save the 50-some cents it is now. I don't even know what a postage
Your
is
contribution.
because I bought like a barrel of Forever stamps many years ago.
Oh.
And so
I'll be over to your place and pick up some.
They're secret. They're hidden. They're under lock and key. They're the most valuable thing I own.
I know. what's going
But
on.
at any rate, yes, you can put your own stamp on there and save your fellow taxpayers whatever it is. I think it's 54 cents now.
I think it is.
It's the same as regular first-class mail.
Yeah.
Is what Mr. Hall said.
But do your civic duty. Fill that envelope out, send it in.
But
Vote.
do we want to talk at all about what we're actually voting for?
Well, we mentioned the floor. It should be mentioned that one of the things, many of the people in the community will know about this, but with the tornadic activity most recently distributed, most recently in Joplin, Missouri, in many of the schools there is a shelter area designated, and that will be part of the construction.
Yeah.
So that's one.
And of course, that's the part that I think is the silliest because the schools already have shelter areas of reasonable safety, and the odds of a tornado hitting a school and killing somebody are way, way minimal compared to the odds of a kid going to school getting hit by a car.
Well,
Everybody in this room, I'll bet, knows somebody that got killed in a car wreck, relative or friend.
there's a commentary, but it should be said too that in terms of safety of students, security is another issue that they're preparing for. So harm to students, teachers, whoever is at the school really is one of the safety of those people is really a central part of this bond election.
So what annoys
So we're
me is
urging you to vote for it.
you only get to vote yes or no. You don't get to vote for which parts of the things are worthwhile, that you think are worthwhile.
Yeah.
That was all done in committees and public meetings that practically no one attended.
But it must be said, thoroughly done. The
Yeah.
public had at least 3 opportunities.
They had plenty of opportunity.
To make their wishes known.
But
So,
I was out of town for every one of them because that's just how much I leave town.
I was here for one, 2, maybe 2. Yeah.
But at any rate,
Yeah.
you know, all-day kindergarten, definitely a good thing in this day and age, the way the wages are and the fact that everybody has to work if you're going to support a family.
And Salina being one of the few districts in the state who does not have it.
Yeah, there are only 13 that don't have it, and we're one of them.
Yeah.
And who wants to be one of 13? I mean, isn't that inherently unlucky?
Out of how many hundreds? But go ahead.
But, well, there's not
305, or at least 305.
There's not 305 anymore because they've been consolidated. So the
Oh,
numbers
that's true.
go higher.
Oh, you were right.
The
You were right.
numbers assigned to the school districts are higher than the number of school districts that actually exist.
That is an important fact to bring out.
And there
I
should be
forgot
more of that too because of the depopulation of the West, because of the lack of water and other,
we're back to that
other
again.
environmental factors and
I'll tell ya.
economic and cultural factors that are real but hard to control and name. But we're still suffering depopulation between here and Denver or the Front Range of the Rockies.
Yeah. All
Doesn't
things are
have to-
tied together.
Denver is not the only place on the Front Range of the Rockies. But anyway, I digress again. I was about to launch into why Denver should still be in Kansas. But that's for another program. We'll
Well,
talk
you wrote
about
a letter about that once.
the
did
great
you not?
Kansas Territory. Oh, yeah.
Take just a minute. I think that would be a good thing. Can you?
It's
I know you can do
it's
it.
a digression. We're talking today about
Oh, okay.
watch your mail.
This will be a later show.
Get your envelope, mark it yes or no to the best of your conscience, remembering
Yes.
that we need all-day kindergarten, we need to rebuild South High School before it falls down of its own accord and kills somebody. We may or may not need assembly rooms that are also alleged to be tornado-proof, but we can use the assembly rooms at least. And we do need better security in the schools where you come in a door at an office and people know who comes and goes into the school.
Yes, indeed.
And that the doors, that we don't have open doors all over the place that just any old lowlife
Without
can get
singling
in
out
and
a
out of the
school,
school.
we've seen pictures. We don't want people to get ideas, but yes, there are several.
There
where the
are-
offices are just not open to
Yeah,
the,
where we don't have good
see.
security in our schools, and unfortunately, we need better security because that's the way America has gone. So those are the main things that are in this bond issue. And then fold it up, put it in the envelope, sign it, hand carry it, stamp it, or just drop it in the mail well before, a couple of days before the 8th. That's where the hand carrying may come in for us procrastinators. We may hop on our
do-
bicycles and pedal over and turn it into the election office by hand.
which is a nice segue into
the last
your
minute.
bicycle section coming up.
Bicycle section coming up. I think we beat the polling process over the head enough. So we're going to take a short break here, get rid of this table, and we're going to talk about pedaling on our pathways,
All
which is bicycling.
We're saying
This segment's called Pedaling on Our Pavement, and I'll probably try to do one of these every show. And of course, if this ends up being the only show, this will be like a classic because this is it. But at any rate, I mentioned in the introduction minute that I started riding bikes again when I was about 60, which is 7 years ago. And I'm riding mostly in and around our fair city. And the beauty of our fair city is, if you haven't noticed, if you haven't gotten out of your car and you haven't walked, that our city is mostly flat. And so it's ideal for bicycling as long as things go smoothly and you pay attention and you don't fall in any chuck holes and you don't be run over by any motor vehicles. But one of the things that we need to do is to raise bicyclist awareness and driver awareness about the existence of bikes and their right to ride around town. And so over these last 6 or 7 years, we've got several things going. We started a first Saturday bike ride, which is now every Saturday from April through October. Starting the first one this year will be April 5th, 9 a.m. We start at the parking lot next to the Cozy Inn on beautiful 7th Street, downtown Salina. It's a low-speed ride. You can ride virtually any kind of bike, and it's, as I said, slow speed. We try to keep it under 10 miles an hour peak, which isn't very fast, and we try to stay in a fairly cohesive group, yet follow the rules and regulations, and do some routes that show that you can go shopping, you can use your bike instead of a car to get places, get things done, and just have fun. So the thing after, it's been going, those Saturday rides have been going about 3 years now, and so we've also during that time put together a bicycle advocacy group which you can join on Facebook. It's called Salina Bicyclist Advocacy Group, pretty clever name, and then these first Saturday rides, and there's some high-speed rides sponsored by Bike Tech, and there's lots of opportunities to ride, but the first Saturday group is, we're talking about practical riding and recreational riding for fun, that you can go shopping, you can go to work, you get on your bike and go to meetings. Unfortunately, I must be honest enough to say I did not ride the bike over here from my home, but I might one of these other days, assuming we're going to do this again. I thought I'd do a little show and tell, because the weird thing about bicycles is that basically the common bicycle, diamond frame, has been around since the 1880s. And the big racing bikes you see are virtually identical to an 1880s bicycle, except in 1880s they were all single speed and fixed gear. Fixed gear is fun to ride, hard to ride. It means that the pedals always turn. You have no brakes except if you're strong enough to pedal backwards against your own pedaling force. And of course, that's what true messenger bikes ride. There's been some great movies. The most recent one was 2011. It's called Premium Rush, and it's about messenger bicyclists in New York City. And the very last words in it are steel frame, single speed, no brakes. And that's what a basic 1880s bike is, and they're still building them. This little bike I brought for show and tell tonight is not an 1880s style, but such things were developed by the 1920s. This is a folding bicycle. This particular one is called a Dayhan Speed 8, and it says, it's got this terrible logo on here that people recognize because it was given away as a promotion by that particular company and given away at drawings in convenience stores. And I bought it through the miracle of Craigslist from someone that won it and then never wanted to ride. But it's a fun little bike because it has 8 speeds. It's adjustable really easily. You can drop the seat so you can make it fit almost anybody without too much hassle. Let's see. Now I far out my mark. There's my mark, 13 and a half. And then it folds up so you can throw it in the trunk of a car and take it with you anywhere you go. And then if you go someplace that has lots of bike trails, you're all set because you've got your bike with you, you pop it out, and away you go. One thing about having a bike is you really should try to learn to do some of your maintenance. And of course, the only maintenance I like to do is clean them up, and I don't do that very well. This is still dirty from our last snowstorm, or the day or two after our last snowstorm. I was out riding around in the mud and the muck and that sort of thing, and so need to shine it up a little bit. Now, one of the interesting things about detailing cars and bikes, and you may know that I'm kind of a car enthusiast too, that we have great products these days, and the fastest, easiest way to touch up your bike is what I just did, a spray can of spray cleaner and polish or spray detailer. And even though this is not commercial television, I'm going to plug this stuff is the best spray polish I've ever found. It's Pro Honda. It's for motorcyclists, but it works great on bikes, and it works great on cars. And it takes the mud off and grudge off and leaves it shiny. And that's what you want to do, maybe. And if you don't, then you can be a grunge rider. We just don't care. The big thing is, in our bicycle advocacy group, we are getting a good response from the city. We've been meeting once a month with the city manager himself frequently comes, Dan Stack, city engineer, and we're talking about improvements. So the city for a long time has had a program where we're doing the recreational trails on the levee. And there's an improvement program going again this year. $50,000 is committed to spend on improving the surface on the very south levee, out south of Schilling actually. And then it comes around and connects to the main river levee that comes up to Crawford and ultimately comes to Iron, and then it goes clear to North Street. And so that's an option for riding. It's not super convenient for going shopping and getting places like that. The other recent things that our city has done, relatively recent, are the 10-foot wide paths along Schilling Road, 10-foot wide path along much of South 9th now, 10-foot wide path up Ohio from Schilling to Magnolia, 10-foot wide path from Magnolia out to the levee to the soccer fields. Now, I've never been to a soccer game or practice to see if anybody rides their bike out there, but you can now, and you can do it much of with that last mile separate from the road traffic. First ride again this year on this casual kind of fun ride we do, probably be, we tend to think we want to go basically down 4th Street, go to the mall, go around the mall, go clear to Schilling, go over to Ohio, come back up to South High School, see if it's not fallen down yet, and then come on back downtown. That'll be about a 10-mile loop. We'll take an hour to hour and a half to ride it. So keep that in mind. At any rate, should I demonstrate how this little bike folds up? Or should I just play with shining it up? That's the question. It's kind of a fun thing. Unfortunately, there's a strange thing about bikes versus cars. In the big picture, there are as many bikes sold every year as there are cars, but there are many fewer bicycle dealers. Here in Salina, we have only one really professional bicycle dealer, that's Bike Tech. The new Dick's Sporting Goods also has a bicycle section that offers service, so they're practically a professional bike store. But there are 25 used car dealers in our town. So bicycles versus cars, it's kind of strange that way that there are so many more dealers on such much more expensive items. Bicycles can run as much as a good used car, or as even a modest new car. I've been looking at one that I'd like to have that's $13,000. So I don't think I'm going to get it, but it's really nice. It's wood frame, made in Denver, out of white ash, walnut. It's got 11-speed internal hub gears in the back, and it's beautiful and should be fun to ride. But if I ever even see one live, I'll be lucky, let alone buy one. At any rate, I guess it's time to fold up and throw this in the car or not. You pull a trigger, you pull the other trigger, the bike goes in half, and for me, that's small enough to go in my car. You can make it much smaller by dropping the handlebars first. Let's see, you gotta be smarter than it is. It's like a computer. You have to push the buttons in the order in which they're designed or it won't work. The pedals fold flat so that they don't poke out. And I'm not doing this all in the right order because I usually don't fold it up. It's small enough and light enough you don't have to. And it'll still fit in my vehicles. At any rate, if you're in a city where you can take your bike on a bus, it's small enough to do that. And it's not very heavy. It weighs about 26 pounds. So that's show and tell today. Somebody spilled coffee. This This would be your coffee mug holder. Not everybody has a coffee mug holder and a coffee mug that will lay down sideways, but I do, but it still leaks a little bit. So it gives you something to polish off. And theoretically, since it's a Coca-Cola logo bike, I suppose you should occasionally have a Coke on it, but I never have. So I don't know, maybe it would like me better, or maybe it just doesn't care. I just don't know. At any rate, think about it. As Trek once said, the answer's in your garage, because lots of people have bikes hanging in a garage that they used to ride, or they thought they were going to ride and didn't. But we're telling you, really, Salina's a good place to ride. It's relatively safe. It's going to get to be safer as we get more people riding. And what did I do wrong there? And it can be a fun group. There are a couple clubs. There could be more. So get out and ride and join us Saturday. It can be any kind of a bike, even something this goofy. At any rate, this ends up PUOP for this installment. It's being recorded on the 18th of March, 2014, and we hope to do it again soon. Watch your schedules wherever they are for Access TV. And some of these, I don't know if this program's going to be available for computer download direct stream at your convenience or not. But look at the website and find out. And if we can get just a little bit of popularity, a little bit of response, I know we can get it on live streaming. So next time, we'll have different topics, but we might have some in the same area, including a video of a group ride from the Saturday rides. Thank you and good night.